TOA Fit Body Bootcamp and Fit Body Forever communities. What's up, everybody? I'm Robert Linkul. Welcome back to trainingtheolderadult.com. I'm going to talk to you today about a couple of clips brought to us by one of my favorite people in the profession, Dr. Peter Attia. Let's go ahead and dive in here and see what Dr. Attia has to say, specifically about women, resistance training, bone density, and so on.
At every age, be it men or women. One of the big misconceptions is women don't need to lift weights. That's completely incorrect. One of the misconceptions is, as you get older, you shouldn't be lifting weights. This is a complete misconception. Strength training is imperative for people as they age. People probably have heard of different types of muscle fibers, fast twitch muscle fibers and slow twitch muscle fibers. The explosive power comes in the type 2 muscle fiber. Well, that is the hallmark of aging, is the atrophy of that type 2 muscle fiber. When you're 80 years old, if you lose your footing slightly and let's just say you're stepping off a curb and you lose your footing, you need to be able to react with enormous force. So much of the injury we see in people as they age is the direct result of the atrophy of that powerful, fast to fatigue muscle fiber. Now, if you train it, you can maintain it. A well-trained 80-year-old can still have the fast twitch muscle fibers of a 60-year-old.
That is excellent and extremely good advice. And I think my favorite part of this is that he's breaking down this barrier, okay? This barrier that is very much so
the weights is
a misconception. First, there's a couple of misconceptions. Let's start with this one. I was at a party for our friend this weekend. He turned 40 and we had a big family gathering. It was awesome. And when you go to gatherings like this, when you're a personal trainer or strength coach, and people know that, they typically come up and they go, "Oh, I got this shoulder. I was hoping you would be here. Could you tell me about the shoulder issue?" Yada yada. And I love it. I take every opportunity to sit and chat with people, and it's one of my favorite things. So I'm speaking with one lady, and she goes, "So I understand you work with older people. Like, what's your big thing advice?" I said, "Number one, you got to lift weights." And she's probably in her mid 60s, I would say. And she looks at me completely straight faced and she goes, "Lifting weights? Yeah, I don't want to get too bulky." And there's a part of my brain when I hear that, and there is no chance ever that any 60-year-old could get too bulky by lifting weights ever. You would have to bathe in testosterone every single day to get enough of a muscular response to your lifting to make you bulky enough to the point where you would say, "I'm too bulky," right? And it's just that's not possible. It's so difficult to become even moderately toned, let alone muscular, let alone too muscular. So that's the first barrier, is it's not like you're just going to walk into the weight room and your muscles are going to get allergic to these weights and they're all going to swell up. And the next thing you know, you're like, "I can't move my neck. I'm so muscular. I can't drink water. My arms are so muscular." That's never going to happen. So I have to explain to her how the likelihood of that happening is really, really slim to actually never. And what's most important about this is that your bones get stressed by the muscles pulling on them to move those weights around. And if your bones get stressed, they'll stay nice and dense. And if your muscles get stressed enough to put pressure on the bones to have them respond, then the ligaments and the tendons and the muscles themselves, they'll be dense and strong enough to not tear or fatigue or become sarcopenic. So now we're bone dense, we're muscular dense, we're joint stable, we're ligament and tendon health improved. And as Peter said here, when you train your slow muscle fiber, slow twitch muscle fiber, your type 1s, fiber 1s, those musculatures, your slow endurance-based musculatures, are extremely important for keeping you stable, keeping you postured, and keeping you strong to lift whatever it is you need to lift. The type 2 fibers, the ones that move really quick, okay? the cleans, the snatches, the drop step lunges, the kettlebell swings, the high pulls, right? The slams, those actions, the tosses, the throws that we do. Those are the lifts that are type 2 fibers that make you reactable to a point where, if that's a word, when you go to step off that curb or you catch your toe or you step on your own shoelace or you trip over the dog or whatever it is that causes you to step, right? It's your body's ability to do that quickly, number one, enough or big enough or into the right length and depth to rescue the fall, number two, and to be strong enough not to buckle under the pressure. I've told you the story before about the lady with the baby in the cart, and the cart starts to roll down the hill, and she just takes a quick step, and her leg snaps in half, and then she hits the ground. She tries to get up again, and her arm buckles in half. Like, her body just breaks and fails underneath her because she's not strong enough to move quickly, but to move quickly enough. Her body's just like, dude, we've never in 60 something years, whatever she is, she's like a nanny or whatever watching this baby, it looks like. She has never moved quickly. And let alone with the intention of, I have to save a life. Like how reactive you have to be at that moment to go like, dude, I got to move quickly now. So that's what he's talking about here. When we do these lifts in house, it's not just, let's pick this little lightweight and I'm going to go through the ranges here for 30 seconds until the dinger dings. And then I'm going to go to the next one and I'm going to pull now, right? And you just go through the motions because you don't want to get too bulky. There's no chance of that happening. And there's all this upside potential to pushing yourself. And that's exactly what he's discussing in this, is the untrained 60-year-old is destined to be disabled as an 80-year-old. So you have got to put in the work, and it's never too late. Okay, let's review a little
Essential for everyone at every age, be it man or woman. One of the big misconceptions is women don't need to lift weights. That's
women, you are 3 times more likely to have bone density issues than men. Your bone density is going to start to decrease in your late 20s, early 30s if you don't start to resistance train, eat good proteins and good mineral and vitamin intake, etc. When you become premenopausal, your bones are going to become very vulnerable. Well, number one, through your menstrual cycle every month, you're going to have vulnerabilities through that cycle. I believe it's days -1, -2. So 2 days before you start your cycle, you become very vulnerable. Your ligaments and your tendons become a little bit extra pliable as your body's kind of going through that pre-cycle. And then when you go through it, I think it's days like 3 and 4. Don't quote me on this, but there are a couple of days where you are extremely susceptible to injury. And your joints and your ligaments, your tendons are more pliable, and so they're not as stable. And this is where a lot of the ACL injuries come from, and just a lot of injuries in general, specifically for athletes, and specifically non-contact injuries, where nobody hits you. You're just planting and you go to move, playing soccer, and your ACL snaps. But it's in many cases, I don't know the exact percentages, but it's very high. It's during one of those 2 days, either pre or post, etc., where you're just a little bit more vulnerable to injury, okay? Then you're premenopausal, so you have this undulation in hormonal response, which typically means your estrogen levels are dropping, your testosterone levels that are already low are starting to fade. Then you become menopausal, you're going into that. Now those estrogen levels are dropping, testosterone's pretty much gone. And then post-menopause, unless you're doing some type of replacement therapy, you're not going to have that anymore. And so now the potential to build muscle and get too bulky is slim to none. If not, it's just, you just don't have anything there to assist you in actually building that musculature that you want. So you're going to have to take some type of hormone replacement if that's your goal. And at the same time, even just a tiny, and Peter talks about this often, just a tiny little bit, like 1% the testosterone they would give men, they give to ladies in going through menopause or postmenopausal, and it helps tremendously. It helps with mood, it helps with sleep, it helps with hot flashes, it helps across the board. And it helps maintain bone and muscle mass, okay? Bone density, muscle mass. So these are all kind of key components, but multiple times through your life where you're going to have challenges like this to where it's like, okay, we need to make some adjustments, knowing that because of all these different key timeline points. Like, we've got to have some more musculature built to us, and the earlier the better. Lift early, get that muscle mass on you, because once you maintain those fibers, once you tear fibers and they rebuild and they reconnect, you still have those fibers. Even if you stop training, you still have them. They just shrink, they get smaller, but they can be rebuilt. They can be replenished at any point in life.
Completely incorrect. One of the misconceptions is, as you get older, you shouldn't be lifting weights. I mean, this is a complete misconception.
This is often related to you're older, so you have a higher injury rate now. But this is a chicken and egg discussion here a little bit. Do older people get injured often because they're under muscled? Or do older people get injured because they're lifting weights and they're doing high risk activities that put them into potential situations to get injured, right? And you would look at like, well, what are these high, stress, high injury risk situations you're talking about? Oh, going to the grocery store and walking up and down stairs, or getting up and down off the ground, or pulling the trash cans up the driveway, blowing off the driveway with the blower, ascending or descending a ladder, hanging Christmas lights. Like, everyday stuff is my point. These are not high risk. They're not skydiving. They're not spelunking. They're not like doing some thrilled, like, I've got to risk my life situations. And it's like, oh, hey, you got injured doing that. They're just doing like everyday regular crap. But because they're so deconditioned, one false move, one little trip, one little roll of an ankle, the ankle snaps, the leg breaks, down they go, their forearm snaps, they crack their ribs. You're like, what happened? And they're like, they missed the last rung of the ladder and they fell 6 inches. You're like, all that happened from a 6-inch fall? Yep. Wow. I mean, your bones are made of balsa wood at that point. You're so deconditioned that even falling on grass or something like that, I mean, it can be bad, is my point.
Strength training is imperative for people as they age. People probably have heard of different types of muscle fibers, fast twitch muscle fibers and slow twitch muscle fibers. The explosive power comes in the type 2 muscle fiber. Well, that is the hallmark of aging, is the atrophy of that type 2 muscle fiber. When you're 80 years old, if you lose your footing slightly and let's just say you're stepping off a curb and you lose your footing, you need to be able to react with enormous force. So much of the injury we see in people as they age is the direct result of the atrophy of that powerful, fast to fatigue muscle fiber.
What is the enormous force that he's talking about? About 3 times your body weight.
Bone mineral density is very important.
About 3 times your body weight. When we look at somebody walking quickly onto a force plate, the amount of pressure put down, ground reactive force put down into the ground, into the force plate, when they take that step, moving quickly, they're in a full speed walk. It's about 2 to 3 times their body weight of ground force being put through their legs. So if you weigh, 150 pounds, we're anywhere from 300 to 450 pounds of pressure as you're walking quickly through that stride. Now, if you start to run, that can go upwards of 3 to 5. If you're sprinting, it can be 5 to 8 times your body weight. Like, that's a lot of pressure that can go back through your body, through your frame. So you go, okay, we need a significant amount of muscle mass and we need a significant amount of bone density to be able to support us when we move through those phases and those movements that quickly. Forward, backward, side to side, and any combo or variation of that in between, because we don't always just fall perfectly straight sagittally forward, right? Or, we are going to fall in multi-angle, multi-plane kind of movements, and we need to be able to react to those and move dynamically in those to rescue these falling situations. So if I have to be able to handle that much pressure, I've got to be able to take some weight in hand and eccentrically move it down slowly, concentrically move it quick, eccentric, slowly, concentrically move it quick. So my body gets used to different tempos, but the muscles get placed under stress when they change direction, and it's slow, and they stretch and they stretch and they stretch and they react, and then they slow and they stretch and they stretch and they react. What does that sound like? If I'm walking and then I stumble, I'm normal, I react. This is how strength training with different varied tempos, velocity training, if you will, high velocities, low velocities, lighter weights fast, heavier weights slow, etc., how that prepares you and how it carries over from this room out to real world. All right. Next clip. Let's talk about this a little bit.
For both sexes, but women are at a greater risk. And the reason for that is the way bones work, and I'm oversimplifying.
Three times as likely, by the way, 3 times greater at risk than men, bone density.
A little bit, but bones effectively have strain gauges in them, and they respond to tensile stress. So when a muscle is contracting, the muscle via the tendon is attached to the bone, and as the muscle contracts, the bone is compressing. So imagine a strain gauge inside the bone that senses that. Well, that's a mechanical signal.
Okay, so he's suggesting origin of your bicep. You have 2 heads, okay? One that's just on the upper part of your humerus, number one that's on the coracoid process. They're going to come all the way down and insert on the radial tuberosity here on the forearm, okay? So he's suggesting when these 2 muscles, when they're 2 ends of the muscle, when they engage and they pull on each other, how much, if you were able to put a little sensor in the bicep, like how much pressure is being pulled, how much pressure is being calibrated by the 2 ends of those muscles going contract. Actin, myosin have to act upon each other. They have to engage with each other. That's what he's kind of drawing the correlation here so far.
That gets converted into a chemical signal, so mechanical to chemical via estrogen. Estrogen is the hormone that does the signal transduction, and that tells osteoblasts and osteoclasts, which are the bone-building, bone reabsorbing cells, to make the bone stronger, not weaker. So in other words, the use it or lose it philosophy is at play here.
Okay. So osteoclasts come in and they just start to erode and like tear away at bone, and the osteoblasts come in and they start to rebuild and replenish bone, and they do this little dance based on the demand and the stress being placed on the bone. So if you have one end of the bone, the other end of the bone, and that muscle is pulling on those, the bone's going, I'm getting stressed. If that reaction of contract the muscle really quickly, really dynamically is done, and the bone is not strong enough to support, in many cases, we can break our own bones if we are, in a sense, like we're contracting too strong. This does happen in deconditioned individuals that are falling or reacting to something very quickly, but they're so deconditioned and they have osteoporosis, not even osteopenia, like early onset. They have full-blown osteoporosis. Their bones are starting to die away and hollowing out, etc. And then you contract forcefully really hard, and the bone, the muscle itself, the 2 ends can contract together so forcefully that they break the bone or at least dislodge from one end where the muscle tears, okay? What he's saying is, for that contraction to happen, especially as we age, for the ladies, you need estrogen. So as you're closing in on menopause, what's happening to your estrogen levels? Those are declining, right? So if we're going to continue to ask these muscles to contract forcefully to maintain the bone density, to maintain the muscle mass you need to not fall down, stay upright, and move about, you have to have the presence of estrogen to assist you in doing that. So unless you're going to do a hormone replacement therapy, HRT, this is probably not going to happen or maintain very well as you age, because you don't have the hormone that assists you in maintaining the bone density and muscle mass you need, thus making you weaker, more frail, more susceptible to falls.
And estrogen is the key link. Now, men and women have estrogen, and it's very important for both sexes. The difference is women lose estrogen precipitously in midlife, and therefore women are more at risk for osteopenia and osteoporosis. Now, for men and women alike, it's very difficult to add bone density after you reach the critical period of maturation, typically in the early 20s.
This is very accurate, and they're finding that trained individuals, people that have been lifting, let's say since puberty-ish, people that are lifting weights, right around 35 will hit maximum bone density, like the actual highest level of bone density. Deconditioned can be as early as 25 to 28, somewhere in there. They'll hit bone density max just based on gravity and years spent of the body being placed against gravitational demand. And your hormones are at high points and you're being fairly active. But if you were just seated all the time, say you're a computer programmer or you're into gaming, you program all day long for 8 to 10 hours and you come home and game for another 5 or 6 hours and then you sleep. And the rest of the time you're sitting watching television or sitting and eating. There's sitting, staring. Like that's all you do. So your body's just folding slowly over the years. You're like, I'm 31 and I can barely, you're Mr. Burns and you're 31. What the hell? Like what this is where the use of muscle mass, what he's saying, use it or lose it, or else you're going to be an extremely old young person as far as a bone density, posture, frail, sarcopenic, osteoporosis based, osteoarthritic based, high susceptibility to injury, high susceptibility to disease, because the more muscle mass you have, the longer you live and the healthier you will live. So you are demuscled, deboned, and poor postured and poorly capable of manipulating your body through space. So the potential risk of you either having a disease and or having a catastrophic injury are very high. And you're in your late 20s, early 30s.
So unfortunately, most of our audience is past that point, right? I'm not sitting here having a discussion with teenagers. But of course, if I am, the answer is load bearing. Reach your genetic potential while you have a chance. But for those of us who are past that point, the key is how much can you slow the rate of decline? And nothing is more important for that than load-bearing activity. And in fact, it needs to be, heavy load-bearing activity. Walking does not count as load-bearing activity. Running, certainly better than swimming or cycling where you're not bearing load, but none of those compare to strength training. So strength training is really the most important piece of maintaining bone mineral density, and it must be supported from an endocrine perspective with the appropriate amount of estrogen and potentially testosterone, and certainly with the correct nutrition and supplementation such as vitamin D and the right amount of protein and things like that.
How about that? How about that statement right at the end right there? The right amount of estrogen, okay, and testosterone. Now, I'm no doctor. We'll listen to Peter on this one. But I have read the research, and there's a pretty good amount of research out there that suggests that premenopausal and menopausal women having some hormone replacement therapy that includes a little bit of testosterone has been extremely beneficial in all the things that we mentioned earlier, right? With mood swings and sleeping and cognition and body recovery and muscle mass maintenance and bone density maintenance and regulation on thermal regulation, assisting with hot flashes, etc. All this good stuff. And not a whole lot of negative on the other end, unless it's abused, as with any case, with any supplement, any medication, anything. If you abuse it, there are going to be negative ramifications on the other side. So if you are using as prescribed, there's some pretty good research to support this is not a bad route to go. So the arguments you can make on this, it's like, is it natural? Shouldn't we just naturally, my grandma didn't, or my mom didn't, or whatever it might be? Times they are changing. And if there are ways to better improve our bodies as we go through this, why would we not take advantage of that? And I will give you a explanation of why someone like myself is taking testosterone replacement. I have for 4 years. I had my thyroid, I had a carcinoid tumor in my thyroid, in which I had Hashimoto's disease as well. And so my thyroid was not working well. Then it was basically consumed by a tumor, and I had to take that out, my parathyroid, and a small little chunk of my sternocleidomastoid, okay? With that, for about 6 or 7 years, my testosterone level production was zero, literally a zero score, no testosterone. And through that, I started to gain excessive weight, could not build muscle mass, bones were starting to get soft. I had I don't know, 8 or 9 surgeries during that time, massive amounts of migraines and tension headaches and all kinds of stuff that was going on wrong. I research testosterone replacement. I start into it. We gradually ease our way into this. It takes about a year to get all my prescription, more or less, how many units per month, etc., all that I'm supposed to get. Go through that whole thing and find for men, a 250 to 1100 score is kind of the norm. So if you can get around 400 or 500, like that's just kind of normal. 600 is kind of normal or average, which is great. Be awesome to be like that. Okay. So mine sits around 350, 400. So I'm not by any means overly abusing this by anything. The reason there are so many men in their 40s, like myself, in their 50s, in their 60s, with extremely low, if not no testosterone, is being traced back to our food, to our, number one, the pesticides that are being sprayed on our food, and or the processing in which our food is being created. As a kid, I ate the majority of my food came out of a can and or was heavily processed and or was heavily treated with pesticides. The average male in his 40s has a testosterone level of the average 60-year-old from the 1960s, 50s, somewhere in there. Meaning we've lost 20 years of testosterone maintenance due to the foods that we eat, and it's only getting worse. The next generation of 20-year-old males right now, their testosterone levels are even lower than that. And so because of the food and because of our environment in which we're being raised, hypothetically speaking, again, I'm not making 100% statements, but based on the research and my readings and my findings, because of our environment and our foods being in, we are weaning out. We are reducing the amount, our body's natural ability to produce testosterone. And so you either have to make drastic changes to that, which a more carnivore-esque diet would then would definitely assist in that, but also supplementation and or in this case, additional medications. And the change that I felt personally was drastically different to going from I felt this way in my 20s to basically the majority of my 30s not feeling like myself or capable or able or being happy with any part of my body and its performance, both in the field, in the bed, everything else, right? To feeling normal and like capable again, to feeling really good about myself and how well my body feels. I think that's extremely important. And if other people are able to experience that and do that, and statistically they are, everybody's kind of jumping on this bandwagon. You need to do so safely and under the supervision of your doctor and have your blood work done regularly. Ladies are no different. You're just new to this idea of treating testosterone with testosterone replacement later in life. And new to it, I would say some of the research goes back about 10 years. And, of course, we don't know the long-term effects of 20, 30, 40 years of menopausal women taking testosterone because we just started 10 plus years ago, okay? So I think more will come, but as what we see now, again, as long as it's not abused, there aren't a whole lot of negative side effects here, okay? I mean, a couple of things, ladies, you get facial hair and you get big neck and shoulders. I'm kidding. Like there are some little things that can come about, but again, these are all typically with extra abuse. But yeah, you'll have a little more hair growth in some areas, like your bikini line in your armpits will be a little thicker than normal, that kind of stuff. But hey man, if it's going to help you build more muscle mass, etc., and maintain your bone density and to help you through all the menopausal issues that you experienced, I think that having to wax a little more often is probably okay. And this comes from a person who waxes. So I'm not saying, no, I'm not doing anything you're doing. I do it too. Okay. I have regular shaving maintenance as well. I go to my barber, etc. Got to get the shit trimmed up. I got to look nice, right? Now, I went from shaving my head every other day to having to shave my head daily once I started using testosterone. And I think that is of great value. I'm missing a lung. I'm missing my thyroid. I had a medical issue with this, but also my testosterone scores prior to that were already extremely low. So this was already happening. I just had a disease that accelerated it. So long story short here, this last, 7 minutes kind of sharing my personal stuff with you is I number one, we are not guaranteed tomorrow. So when a lot of people go, well, what's this going to do for you long term? I could get hit by a bus today. Who knows, right? This might be my last video. God willing, it's not, but it may be. And if it is, I love you and I think you're fantastic. And I hope that I've had some kind of meaningful effect in your life. And I appreciate everything that you've ever brought to mine. So thank you, if this is it. And in saying that, I think that you need to do things, or you should, I would encourage you to do things to improve your quality of life right now. Be smart, obviously, but no, you're not guaranteed 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. If you could know that, then things would be different, but you're not. You never know. So as a 36-year-old man at the time, they go, well, if we do a hip replacement, you're probably going to need another one in 20 years. Can you just wait till then? So 20 years, I need to be miserable, unable to move, unable to train, can't play with my kids, can't go on. Seriously? Like, for what? What if I die at 50? Now I just spent the last 14 years being miserable, and then I died at 50, and my kids were like, my dad was just always a moody prick. Like, why? Get this? My opinion was get the surgery now, rehab, and move well, and be well, and play with your kids, and do all this that I've been doing. And now if I die at 50, then awesome. I had 14 years of being really capable and happy and healthy, and my kids can remember me as being a pleasant human being most of the time. And then if I get to 60 and I need another hip replacement, then so be it. Our advancements in the world of medicine have gotten better and better. And the hip that I got basically just needs an oil change. Like, they take out the plastic bits and put in some new ones, and I'll be good to go. Our bodies can maintain. They can do this. Live for the now is my opinion. And I don't just mean like, screw the retirement money. Like, we're investing in all that stuff too. But at the same time, we're living now as well, because we understand you are not guaranteed tomorrow. So we have some long-term investments. We have some now investments for experiences and trips and things that we want to do. This is taking a turn into the personal world of beliefs, etc. I'm not telling you that you should go and do this. I'm telling you that you should look into it, that you should see if this would be beneficial. And the research suggests for most people out there, it definitely is. And I am more than happy to share with you my experience and what I use and what it does for me. I do use creatine. I take muscle therapy recovery supplements. I take collagen. I take fiber, oat fiber. I have a multivitamin. I take magnesium. I've got a whole slew of good stuff that I like to take every day that helps me a ton. I've got a formula for kidney and for liver health and turmeric and on occasion ashwagandha. I've got a whole slew of supplements in there that my wife and I take. We take a Vitagreen mix that we mix in with our juices and our shakes. This is a high quality standard that I'm looking for. I want to maximize my ability to live as well as I can right now. And I encourage you to do the same, whatever that might look like for you. Take care of your bones, take care of your muscle mass. And I think that last one is probably the most important. The more muscle you have, let me leave you with this. The more muscle you have, the longer you will live, the more disease-free you will live, statistically speaking. The more quality of life you will experience as well. So you'll live longer, you'll live more efficiently, more effectively in your ability to do so, right? That's going to ultimately improve your quality of life and reduce your potential risk of injury, disease, etc. across the board. Get more muscle mass. You are not going to get too bulky, even if you are on hormone replacement therapies. You are not going to get too bulky. It's just not possible. The people that you look at, okay, you ladies out there, you may look at another female and go, that lady's too bulky. If you asked her, in this individual in your mind is too bulky, if you ask her, how often do you train? Her answer is going to be 5 to 6 days a week. I lift extremely heavy weights. My goal is to get as big and as muscular as I possibly can, and I want to be huge and jacked. And that person might to you look a little bit over muscular, but to them, they are trying as hard as they can to get as huge and as buff as they can. And they still are just slightly over muscled in your opinion. Okay. So if you just go to the gym twice a week for 20, 30 minutes, 3 days a week would be ideal, and just go through the circuits and lift a little bit, you're only going to improve your quality of life with better bone density, holding on to and maintaining muscle mass, and keeping your ability to stay upright and move around and play with your kids and your grandkids and the dog and do all the things you want to do with reducing the risk of falling down and getting hurt. And if you do fall down, hopefully your bones and your muscles are strong enough and dense enough to where nothing breaks on you. You're just good. That's the plan. All right, gang, that's enough for today. I hope you enjoyed this. I am Robert Linkul. I'll put the links to both videos in the description down below. And if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section below. Please hit the subscribe button, like and share, ring that bell. Make sure you don't miss any of the content. We put up at least one new video for you every week, if not more. And until next time, please continue to fight your good fight against sarcopenia. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.